monks on a tiny island joined up to the English mainland during times of low tide noticed something strange on the horizon. They left their monastery and houses and looked out towards the sea, and for many this would be the last glimpse of calm and nature that they had. What was coming for those monks was ruthless slaughter, murder and brutality. The Vikings were here, and they would cause chaos. They sacked the riches of the monastery and cut the peaceful monks down where they stood with their axes and weapons. Over the next few centuries, Viking raids plagued England, and they caused a huge amount of bloodshed. And today the men of the north are known for their fearsome fighting reputation. But they brought with them an execution method which has been one of the most sadistic, mindlessly violent and terrifying in the whole of history, a punishment so horrific that the enemies of the Vikings would surrender to them, without any questions asked. Now, the blood eagle for the Vikings was a form of ritualistic sacrifice, and it was seen as the Vikings offering someone up to the gods, but this was an execution method which was not sparing in its pain. And the intention was to cause so much pain to someone who had wronged the Vikings. Inside of 2 sagas, explanations about the blood eagle exist, and it was a public form of execution where huge crowds would flood to witness the sacrifice. One thing to consider about the Vikings is that despite the huge battles and ferocious fighting that they are known for, they were in fact very religious people who loved their gods greatly. The blood eagle was one way that they believed that they could please these gods, and the enemies of Vikings were targeted with this. The method of execution had many different steps. Firstly, the victim would be led out in front of the crowd, and an executioner, or a senior Viking leader, or a powerful official, would be the man armed with the axe, performing the blood eagle. The victim was laid down, sometimes on a table or a surface, and the executioner would then begin the sacrifice with his axe held aloft in his hand in the air, and he would strike the victim in the back a number of times. The aim of this was to open up a large wound in the back and to then cut through the skin and then also the muscle. After this cut had been made, the next step was ruthlessly barbaric. The victim had their ribs severed from the spine, and then the ribs were pulled out to the side to give the image of wings of the eagle. After this, the execution was finished by the executioner pulling out the lungs and then placing them over the broken ribs, and someone could still be alive up until this final stage. And this must have been incredibly painful and something not worth even thinking about. Now, some people actually debate whether the blood eagle was actually even practiced, or how often, or whether it was just a form of fearsome propaganda that aided the reputation of the Norsemen. It was found in a number of pieces of Viking literature. In one of these writings, one man, a Prince Halfdan Haug, a prince is killed, but the other victim was a man who was a high-ranking enemy of the Vikings in England, King Aelle of Northumbria. The first execution involving the prince took place in the 9th century, and it was said that Torf Enar executed the son of Harald Fairhar. This was done as a sacrifice to the god Odin, and it was claimed of this blood eagle that Einar made them carve an eagle on his back with a sword, and then cut the ribs all from the backbone, and drew the lungs there out, and gave him to Odin for the victory that he had won. Another account of this says that afterwards Earl Einar went up to Halfdan and cut the blood eagle on his back. In this fashion that he thrusts his sword into his chest by the backbone and severed all the ribs down to the loins, and then pulled out the lungs. And that was Halfdan's death. But as mentioned, the execution of King Aelle of Northumbria is probably the most famous example of the blood eagle, and it was claimed that Aelle was the very man who executed famous Viking Ragnar Lothbrok by feeding him to a pit of snakes for the Viking raids that he had conducted. But the sons of Ragnar then sought their revenge for the death of their father, and Aelle was killed after a battle. He erupted from the city of York and was captured by Ivar the Boneless. It was said of his execution that they caused the bloody eagle to be carved on the back of Aelle, and they cut away all the ribs from his back and spine and then ripped out his lungs. Another account of the Northumbria king's death said, they did at the appointed time, and when they had captured him, they ordered the figure of an eagle to be cut in his back, rejoicing to crush their most ruthless foe by marking him with the cruelest of birds. Not satisfied with impressing a wound on him, they salted the mangled flesh. It is fair to say that the blood eagle was a horrific and terrifying execution method. If it was just a piece of Viking propaganda to make the Vikings seem so feared, what is shocking is that someone even came up with this and knew about the body at a time considered the Dark Ages, to make up the punishment and the imagery of an eagle. When those monks spotted the Viking longships on the horizon when they were at Lindisfarne, it's likely they could never have imagined what savagery and brutality would come with the arrival of the people that would attack them. Though raids such as this and stories such as the Blood Eagle, the Vikings made some of the most intimidating and scary people of the time. What do you think? Is the Blood Eagle one of the most brutal and barbaric and harrowing execution methods in history? Do you think it was actually used? I would love to hear your comments on this. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.